Can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm over here throwing stuff off my desk. Trying to. I just ate, and so I'm just touching up with the stick real quick. And it always is easier to do on the live camera. Sorry. So how are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I am good. Other than the fact that I just did my lipstick way too dark. But that's okay. All right. And we have, I know a couple of the people who are joining us, this is the first time they've ever done a panel. So I'm keeping an eye out to see if I get an email or a message from them. I know that I've seen Rebecca promoting it already over on Twitter. Yay.
Nice.
I worked all day today, so I haven't really gotten a chance to do much on the way of everything going on with the con. Have you gotten a chance to see some of the stuff that's been going on?
I've been participating on a couple panels, and I've been working.
Going back and forth. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had hoped that that's how my day would have gone, but it was a crazy Friday today. So.
Oh yeah, it started off crazy for me, but thankfully, since I'm, working from home, once things died down, it's like, oh good, just in time for me to get to the panel.
I can
So
hop in. Yeah, that's good. I'm so glad that you were able to do that. And what was the other panel that you were on? Was it the sci-fi one?
Sci-fi.
Awesome.
2 sci-fi ones.
Awesome. Cool, cool. Okay. I know Shane had to bow out because he had some stuff come up at the last minute, and he's not going to be able to join us. So we're just waiting for Rebecca and Sharon. So I know you're participating in the story origins. Did you get that email?
Was it for the link?
Yeah, to register your book on the story origins page.
Think I did, but I will have to double check on that because it was one of many things I was trying to rush through.
I know. I apologize. We had not planned on waiting till the last minute, but next year all of this will be done 2 or 3 weeks in advance so that it's not at the last minute like it's been, and it won't be so stressful.
Oh yeah, I completely understand. Everything seems like we're getting adjusted to the whole, being online more than we're attending things in person. So
yeah,
it's an adjustment.
Yeah, I do love it though. I've
Yeah,
I've
I'm
been
loving
working
it too.
from home for like 5 years now. So
Nice.
some things haven't changed for me much, but all
Yeah,
right. So
this
I
is
was
something
just
new
double
for me.
checking the story origin. I'm not showing where your book has gotten added yet.
Oh,
So if you want to double check
okay.
that.
I might have had it set there to finish, but didn't complete it. So I'll have
And
to
I
jump in
totally
right after
understand.
this.
I had a blog post that was supposed to go live this morning at 3.
Mm.
Didn't. So I was scrambling to do that during my lunch break. It's okay. You're not alone. Fortunately, I
Okay.
do have it set up so that we're doing the giveaway for like a whole month. So um, it's not the end of the world if we get it in later this afternoon or this evening. Hello, Becca. How are you?
I'm doing pretty
Love the
good.
ears. Those are adorable.
They light up, but I figured that would be a little too flashy.
There's no such thing as too flashy. This is your first time doing LitCon, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. LitCon Lounge after dark, there's nothing that doesn't go over there. It's a little pretty crazy. So
I'll have to remember that.
all good. All right. So I think we're just waiting on Sharon, not Sherilyn. Sorry. Let me let my cat out before we start. Yeah, go get daddy. Go get daddy. I didn't even know you were in here. Go on. Can you get the laser?
I had to
He loves
swap my
laser.
dogs out too, because
Oh, that works too.
I've got a shepherd
And then close the door, please.
right on the other side of the wall
Honey,
over there. She is.
we want to get a dog next. So, yeah. But our kitty thinks he's a dog. So he's managed to stall us in our efforts to get a dog because he's so darn
I had a dog that thought she was a cat. So
cute.
it all works out.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, they just end up being our babies, right? So,
Yeah, pretty much.
all right.
Trying to angle my head right so that there's not so much glare on my glasses.
That you'll see I'm constantly doing this. Oh, I
And I'm
looked at,
like,
and
where
every
is
time
it?
I do it, it's because I just looked at myself and I saw, and then I forget and I get talking and I see it and then I stop and I do it
If I
again.
lean back a little bit, it's still there. It's just always
Yeah,
there.
it's crazy, but
I
it's
get
better
that
That's
than
why
the
it's
with
good to have a
migraines.
hat.
migraines
You
too.
can, the hat can give you the shade you're looking for.
You
It
know, I
helps.
didn't even think about that, but my ears won't fit under the hat, so
That
I
is
can't do that.
fair.
My hat looks very similar to yours. I was looking at the band. I'm like, that
Mhm.
looks almost exactly like mine.
Let's shop at the same place. Well,
Um,
Amazon, but
East Tennessee. So probably not.
Amazon for me. Yeah, the hat store I used to go to is currently closed, so
Oh,
looking forward to when they can open again.
Yeah.
I want to go get a new one.
Same
All
here.
right. Well, hopefully Sharon will join us, but it's already 6, so I'm going to go ahead and go live. Okay, and then if you guys want to hop over there, you can see the post live and you can reshare it from the event out, I believe. All right, hello, lovelies, and welcome to LitCon 2021. Today we are talking about urban fantasy in modern times. And we've got some great authors with us to have this conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves to you. Alex, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Alex G Zarete. I'm an author, artist, and photographer. I like to write urban fantasy and science fiction. Currently have 5 urban fantasy books out, and they lean into the supernatural suspense.
Awesome. And then we've also got Becca with us today.
Hello, my name's Rebecca Flynn. My urban paranormal fantasy series kind of brings obscure mythological creatures to the foreground, the kind of creatures that you don't normally see. So I went obscure.
Obscure is always fun. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Angell, and I'm the author of the Hunters Saga, which is for those who believe that vampires should be killed and not kissed. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have another author joining us in a little bit. She may be running late from another event. So if she pops in, we'll give her a chance to introduce herself and then get back to the questions. But to get us started, what is your favorite urban fantasy book and why? And we'll start with Becca, work our way backwards.
All right, then. My favorite urban fantasy, I'd have to say it's more of a series than just a single book. The first one is Stormfront, which is part of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. And I absolutely love it because it's just, an ordinary guy with weirdness everywhere. And he doesn't rely on the gratuitous, unnecessary physical scenes that a lot of other series tend to rely on. So I like that it's all story.
Yep, that is awesome. And then Alex, what's your favorite?
I would, right now, my favorite is probably still Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. It's one of my favorites. I think I started with his Elantris book, but when Mistborn came out, it just that blew me away, and I just could not read that fast enough to get to the series. And I love the spin-off series he did with it. I love the world and the characters that he created from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sanderson is awesome. I got to meet him at Comic-Con a
Oh,
couple years
nice.
ago. So it was pretty cool. Benefit of living in Salt Lake. All right. And then my favorite, this is actually really hard because I can't even pick a favorite genre, let alone a favorite book in a genre. But I'm also going to cheat like you guys did and pick a series. And I think I'm going to go with the Vampire Academy series because she clapped back at the vampire romance that was happening at the time, which I appreciated. And she also took an interesting dive into different existing folklore and gave us a fun new twist on it without completely destroying what the world sees vampires as, like some people who will remain unnamed because I'm nice like that. All right. So Alex, we'll go ahead and start with you on this next one. Tell us a little bit about the world that you've created in your urban fantasy.
The world I created is basically the same one we're in. I have it as the main character is a boy named Tommy, and he comes across a kitten while he's a little boy, and the kitten can read, well, it can see thoughts, and it can teleport, and it shares these gifts with him. So it allows him to use these same abilities, and that opens the door so he can see the world around him. He can see thoughts and images. That also bridges the language gap, so there's no need for words that are coming from the cat to try to figure out what he's saying. It's just images. So it's just a matter of they're communicating in that way, and they can teleport and go places. But for the most part, he sees the bad things that are happening. He can see the good things. He can retrieve thought images from objects. So it's a fun series. I love how I kind of kept it that he has to keep it a secret because no one else can see these things. If you tell someone you can see thoughts, that immediately, well, how are you going to prove it? There's no way. And because he can actually have this ability, he actually understands the repercussions as to what would happen if he starts bringing this out. So it isn't until someone, pretty much stumbles upon it that someone ever finds out. But I've got the 5 books so far. The first 3 are his childhood, and the second 3 are going to be about his teen years going into adulthood. And I've already gotten book 5. That's Reflections in Darkness, and that's him at 16 years old, and he finds out that there are more like him, and one has turned to the dark side.
Oh,
So
I love it. That's the joy of teenage writing for teenagers. You get to have that moral quandary and not have, I don't know, like this whole, I don't know what I'm trying to think, like Weeds and Breaking Bad for adults. It's like we're dabbling in the bad, but we don't care about being good anymore. With the teenagers, you get to do the whole dabbling in the bad, but you want to be good and pushing that,
mhm.
element. I love that. So I know your book is about a teenager. Is it appropriate for teenagers?
It is. There are some dark elements because, of course, when the characters go bad, they are killing, and he's in the third book, I should say. There's neighbors killed. First book, there's actually a trained killer who comes across the cat and decides he must have this unique being. So
Mhm.
he's hunting him and the little boy, and it's like, okay, he's torturing and murdering anybody in his way. So those are the dark elements I play with. However, I don't entertain swearing. I don't have any sex or drugs or anything in there. So it falls solidly in the young adult. However, the intensity of the darkness may turn away some of the younger readers. But for the overall general young adult novel, it pretty well sits in there.
Awesome. I have a almost 17-year-old, so I struggle keeping him in books. So I get excited when I find new series that are more than 1 or 2 books in.
Oh yeah.
All right. And Rebecca, tell us a little bit about your world.
Basically, it's where we are now, and I've got my main character is female. She is a supernatural bounty hunter. She gets hired by um, different councils around the world to hunt creatures, and her least favorite person is on. They call themselves the council, and he is her absolute least favorite person. The only reason that she still talks to them is because they pay her quite a bit of money. But she goes around and they call her up if there's a creature that's kind of terrorizing an area or something. The people that are in that area don't actually know that that's what it is. They think that it's a wild animal, or that the kids are exaggerating, because in my world people don't know that these things are out there.
Mhm.
Because I've noticed that um, a lot of times people as individuals can take that kind of stuff. People as a whole group can't handle those things. So if you kind of open up that can of worms, you get well, how long has this been going on? And, oh, what is the government lying to us about now? That kind of thing. And it just opens up a whole other area that I just don't even want to touch at this point. But I've got 2 books that are published right now. I'm actually almost done with the third one. It's a trilogy. It's called the Pandora Chronicles. The first one is called The Wild Hunted, and the second one is Iron Will. Each of the 3 books is focused on a different mythology. So the
Mhm.
first one is creatures that are from Celtic mythology. The second one is from Greek, and the third one is Egyptian.
Oh,
So,
cool.
and I tried to stay away from, like I said, I tried to stay away from the well-known creatures and the things that everybody's familiar with, because when I first started writing, everything was flooded with vampires and werewolves. They were just
Mhm.
everywhere. And I was like, I want to go a different route. I want to expose people to other things that are in mythology. So I picked weird things that you don't think you've heard of. You may have seen it at some point, but I tried to pick things that were really different.
That is cool. That sounds like a ton of fun. Have you read Rebecca Jonesy's? Oh, I'm totally drawing a blank with the series, but she has a series that she kind of does the same thing, but it's a creature who is born of Mab, and she's sent out to recover the creatures who went to the New World and basically went insane. And
Oh
so she
my.
ties American mythos back to creatures from the old world and
Oh,
the
okay.
similarities of those, and then how they got twisted because of some corruption. And she hasn't revealed what the corruption is, but there's a part of me that's just like, okay, I got to know what it is.
Yeah,
So
I've kind of
yeah,
crossed over mythologies and made those connections between the different mythologies
and
because
it's really
there are.
fun.
Oh yeah, I love doing the research.
Yeah,
I love
yeah. And I like that you're doing different and unique ones. And that was one of the things that drew me to Rebecca too, because after Rick Royden came out with his
it. Hmm.
demigods, and then he started going all over the place, and then he brought them all together, everybody started doing it. And it's the same thing that you're saying, it's all werewolves and
Hmm.
common mythologies. It's fun
Hmm.
to explore the different ones. So
Yep.
that is cool. That is very cool. Okay. Um, so Alex, what are some of the tropes of urban fantasy that you embrace in your series?
For me, the tropes of basically the hero tale and kind of like the suffering uh, protagonist who is going through his journey and struggling the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
For me, because I start him at childhood, I have him begin this journey after losing his father. So he's already grieving on this process, and then he has this kitten that brings him out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gives him these abilities to see these things in the world, which turn out to be there's some good things, but there's a lot of darkness out there as well. So he's as he grows, he finds new things that are more difficult to endure. So I maintain that heroic, suffering character throughout. So he's overcoming these things and becoming stronger for it. But at the same time, he's not, this, you know, flamboyant, Superman, always happy, always positive type of thing. He doubts himself. He doubts, what he's doing. He worries about his family. He worries about friends, and he's constantly doing the right thing, but also agonizing when things go wrong for him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a trope I maintain throughout the entire series.
And I love that. And that's one of the things that fantasy has started to shift to, but urban fantasy has always kind of embraced the reluctant hero and the imperfect hero. And I really like
Mhm.
that because it is a good example to us that we can be heroes too. We don't have to have special abilities necessarily, and special
Mhm.
abilities don't necessarily make being a hero easier, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is awesome. That is fun. Becca, how about you? What are some of the tropes that you embrace?
Well, for me, I, I had actually read an article about the tropes to stay away from, and I was like, most of these are absolutely popular. Like for me, the trilogy is one,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of the trilogy. I mean, you've got Star Wars, you've got Lord of the Rings, and all these other series that I've read. You've got little sections that are grouped together by trilogy, and to me, when you've got a story, you don't want to do it too short because then the reader goes, but but what's after this? There's nothing left. And you don't want to drag it on for too long and end up just having the reader go, oh, is this ever going to end? So to me, the trilogy is just about the right size, to tell your story in. And the Pandora Chronicles is a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And going into it, there's an end. You know how long it's going to take to get to that point. So I like the idea of the trilogy because there's so many positives to it. Um, another one is the idea of the chosen one, and I know that it can be very played out and it can be very annoying sometimes. But when you when you've got a genre where you've got all this stuff that can happen, all these fantastical things that can happen, you've got somebody that's got these abilities, and you're going to have this world altering moment at some point in that world. So why isn't there the chosen one, this one person who can be the strong person, who can be the one that takes that on? So why is that such a bad thing? So I've actually embraced that. My main character has a bit of history that you don't actually find out for a long time, and quite frankly, she doesn't even know about it. So there's that. And then the whole idea of the humans, ordinary human beings, not knowing about the world of fantasy. And like I said before, it's a matter of an individual can take it, people as a whole can't. So
Yeah, and I honestly, I kind of feel like if you move into the alternate history realm, that's not really urban fantasy anymore. If the world knows about these things, if people know about these things, it doesn't feel as real. It pushes more into sci-fi and alternate history, to me. So I like the idea that the possibility of the book being true is there, That's one of my favorite parts about urban fantasy, honestly. It's that aspect. And then also the three act structure has been around since the Greeks, right? So I don't think it'll ever get played out in any which way that we do it.
I just found that to be very amazing. I was like, why would this be something that you should steer away from? I mean, it's just the perfect thing to pack your story into just enough time to get to know the character, to find out what happens, and to defeat the bad guy, basically. You've got just enough time in those 3 books. Why move away from something that works that well?
Yeah, that's true. And that's why it has been around for so long, I think. But there is something to be said of, honestly, I think what happens is we as authors, not as readers, we look at the work as authors, not as readers. And we don't want to be like everybody else, because the whole reason that we're creating the story is that it's a story that hasn't really been told before. And so when we see these trends that are happening, we're like, oh, how do we differentiate ourselves? We're going to be different. We're going to be unique. And then everybody follows that same train. But some things just never get old, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a way that you can be different and still fit into certain things. I mean, that's why fantasy is a genre.
Right.
There's ways that you can differentiate yourself and still fit into the genre.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is true. And then I think if we did away with the chosen one trope, I mean, half of us read it because we want to be special and we want to escape and we want to read people who are like us getting to have that adventure in that world that we wish we could have, right? But I also like that it's often portrayed as not as great as we hoped and wished it would be. And that's kind of life too, right?
Definitely.
All right. And then are there any tropes that you like twisting in your series that, you manipulate in a way that's different from the industry standard?
For me, I like to twist the idea of the enemies of the character. For the first book, I start off with, he's a child and he's being bullied, and some of the bullies are very violent. And there's also a street dog that people are terrified of that they run into from time to time. And by the end of the book, the bullies have actually encountered a truly evil person, which is this killer that comes across the cat, and he kills one of the bullies, and it basically tortures the other ones for information to find out about the boy. By the end of the book, the bully is now, completely turned around. He understands what victimization is, so he no longer feels any kind of interest in and bullying others or hurting others. He wants to, for the first time, actually help other people. And the dog, it begins as being this fearful character, but when this killer is attacking the little boy, something's triggered in the dog's memory of he used to be the protector. So that instinct kicks in, so he attacks this man, and it flips from being, okay, here's this scary dog that everyone's been running from, and now this scary dog has become the hero to the little boy. So it's like I kind of play off of, there are bad characters in the story, but I try to make sure I can flip, any kind of bully, any kind of bad, influence into something that, well, what happens if this bully becomes a friend of the hero, or this, vicious street dog suddenly, develops this sense of, wait, I used to be a puppy and I was taking care of my owner. And then all of a sudden he reverts to that because he sees someone that's in danger, so he goes after it. And it's a nice way of taking away the clear black and white. This is the enemy, you have to always hate this enemy, and this is the hero, you always have to cheer for the hero. The hero, even in my story, he's learning as he goes, so he does make mistakes. He tries to do the right thing, but children learn as they go. So I make sure that he's understanding life experience, life, failings. He does things that are right, he does things that are wrong. So I try not to give this clear, this is always the hero, this is always the villain. Otherwise it for me, that always gets kind of boring after the first couple of books. It's like, okay, well, hero's always doing the right thing, always winning, always getting ahead of it, and the villains are being defeated each and every time. If you keep with that, then you're just writing the same story over and over again. So
Right.
I try to flip that as much as I can.
I like that. I like the idea that there's always the opportunity for redemption, but also there's always the opportunity to not be the good guy. And it's something that you have to choose every day. And sometimes you don't always make the right choice. But
Exactly.
yeah, I also like to play with perspective in mine. So I have the two quote main characters that go throughout the whole series. Fury and Havoc are mystical beings who hunt vampires. And in the first book, when you're introduced to them, you're introduced to them from the perspective of a 17-year-old who was a fan of gothic stories and things like that before his little town was invaded with vampires. And suddenly, this kind of outcast is the leader of this group of kids who've realized what's happening. Kids, they're young adults, 17 to 25 is the oldest one, but they all realize what's happening to their town and they're trying to stop it. And then these people show up, and other people in the group are a little concerned about these people who seem to know what vampires are not surprised, and also manage to kill them really, really well. And this is what Chris has always dreamed about. And so he's completely enamored with them. And so when you hear the story in the first book, it's all about how amazing they are, how badass they are, how tough they are, how awesome they are. And then in the second book, you get to see it from a different character's perspective, where they are a potential threat to his well-being because he could turn into a monster. And they basically told him, if you make the wrong choice, we'll have to kill you, because they're protecting humanity. But he also sees one character in particular in a very different perspective than the horny teenage 17-year-old did. And so he doesn't have a great liking for her. And one of the readers was reading it and they were like, this is not even the same character. And I was like, it is. It's just from a completely different perspective. But we as people are the same way, right? Some people think that I'm the greatest thing in the whole wide world. Others that think that I am Satan's child. It just depends on where our relationship falls and how we interact together on how they feel about me. And I think we all experience that to a degree, but being able to see, we don't really get to see that in stories. We always, because the narrator decides how people see things. And I haven't seen a lot of narrators take that opportunity to make that twist. So that's always fun to play with. But it sounds like you do that to a certain extent, right, Alex?
Mhm. Yeah, I dive into that on a regular basis. I try to make sure that there's different perspectives in the um, second book. There's a criminal who he basically is involved in a hit and run, and he's been hiding out. So he's all of a sudden it's like he's committed this crime. He's in parole violation. He's already wanted, and he's been under an assumed name, and he just committed this horrible crime. So the first thing he's thinking is my life is over. I can't be caught doing this. So he ends up trying to hide things and try to conceal his crime, and he becomes more paranoid in the process. And at one point, he's actually trying to, create an even greater crime, because he's thinking, if this horrible thing happens somewhere, the news will shift to that, and people will forget about what happened, a few days ago with his hit and run, because everyone's talking about it. So let's just go do something even more horrific, and then they'll be talking about that, and I'll just won't be touched by it. And it, of course, that just escalates to a point where it's like, okay, you're seeing his decisions, you see what he's doing, you know it's wrong, but you can actually see his perspective and why he's doing it, because he doesn't know any different. He's been hiding out, he's lived a life of crime. So it's kind of like he's making one bad decision after another. So it's the matter of, you can see it, you understand it. It's not just randomly, okay, he did this hit and run, now he covered up his crime, and now he's committing this other crime. It's not as cut and dried as it would be if you just stayed away from his perspective. I bring you right in, so you see his paranoia grow as the book progresses. And the main character, the hero, uh, he begins to piece together where this is coming from, and he starts trying to find out. He even kidnaps a boy, and the community is trying to find this hit and run person, but they don't know about the missing boy yet. So my main character is trying to track this person down and trying to find this boy, and it all comes together at the end. And it's just a matter of you're making the choice either to help someone or to do things for selfish reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I show you both sides. I show you, so you can actually, by the end, you realize these two completely separate choices are going to result in what you know is going to happen, whether they like it or not. But you're not going to just assume, okay, the hero's being good because he's being good, or the bad guy's being bad just because he's bad. You actually see the reasons behind it and why they're going to that extreme to what they have to do at the end.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And so what character tropes do you twist, Becca?
The big one is the whole damsel in distress thing, because who doesn't love a damsel in distress, right? um, I have my main character is stronger, she's faster than her partner, who happens to be a male. So there's more of she takes control, she's in charge, she does the rescuing. There have been instances where he got hurt, she carried him out of there, that kind of thing. So it's that I'm not the damsel in distress, I'm in charge, I'm the hero, I protect you, kind of a thing. The other one that it's not, I guess, twisted as much, but the when the hero tries to turn the bad guy, turn them good, kind of a thing. I have the bad guy trying to bring the good guy to the dark side, so to speak. So I've seen it done before. I guess it is kind of a twist, kind of a twisted trope, but the bad guy's going, that this is right, that what I'm doing is right, that kind of thing. So trying to come to the dark side with me.
Love it. Love it. Also, I absolutely adore strong females. for those who aren't familiar with my many genres, I write in urban fantasy, I write in apocalyptic, I write in psychic detective thrillers and his, uh, young adult thrillers and nonfiction and children's book and poetry. But all of them, my main theme is strong women and exploring the different types of strength in women. And I have a feeling I would really enjoy your main character because she sounds like me. That's the main reason I got into writing is that there weren't enough strong females that were
Yeah.
realistic. You know, they're always like badass but broken. And I hate that trope so it drives me crazy. But yeah, I love strong females that can also be sensitive and aren't always falling apart, even though they're physically strong. You know, they're both physically and emotionally strong. I like characters like that. So
Right.
that is
She had a
awesome.
little breakdown before the story started. It was something that happened to her, and then it kind of it made her see that what she thought she wanted was not what she actually wanted. So it changed her perspective on everything. So now she's like, being that way is what was breaking me. So
Mhm.
being me the way that I am is what I need to be. This is what makes me stronger emotionally, stronger mentally, just everything in general. So the old what she thought she wanted is what was actually doing the breaking at that point. So she's fixed herself,
I
so to
love
speak.
that. That is awesome. And that's another thing that I think is really fun with urban fantasy that we don't get as much with fantasy is that characters are looking at how to be true to themselves
Hmm.
and dealing in a world that is so familiar to us and dealing with conflicts that are mirroring what's happening in our own world in a lot more real ways, I think, than a lot of like epic fantasy does. Um, I know a friend of mine and I, we were talking about how some people that we knew that watched Star Trek growing up and they're extremely backwards in their thinking. And we're like, how is that even possible that you could watch such a progressive show for the time and then come out being not a little more progressive than they were? But another friend made a good point. It's so far removed from our world that it's hard for them to imagine embracing those behaviors and those
Hmm.
belief systems.
Yeah.
But with urban fantasy, it's it feels more grounded and feels more real, you know,
Hmm.
which I really enjoy.
Yep.
Okay. And then Alex, tell us a little bit about what process you went through when building your world.
For me, it was more of I wanted to see what would happen if I could introduce this character to abilities, but not follow, the typical superhero origin story where he becomes all powerful and he can do all these amazing things, and now he's pretty much unstoppable and he's charismatic and excited, and I didn't want to go in that route. I wanted to make sure he has as much real life situations as possible. Since I started with his losing his father, in the second book, when he is increasing his abilities, he ends up struggling just because he now sees, all the terrible things that have happened. And this killer that came after him in the first book is now like a ghost image that keeps appearing in all places because he can see the memories come up on that. And he ends up pulling up a lucky charm that his father kept, and I have it as a little arrowhead, and he can use that to see his father's life. So he can actually go into that and see his father at childhood and his father growing up. So in a way, he retrieves that part of him of his life, even though his father's gone. So I make sure that it doesn't follow the typical storyline of, you know hero becomes strong and everything is good, it's always he's got to have a challenge. He has to grow as a person each time. The first one is just he just learns. He's 8 years old. The second book, he's 10 years old, and he's had this ability for a while, and he's learning how to control it, but he increases it to the point where he can't control it. And in that story, he has to learn control. So I maintain that. Actually, each book is standalone. So I make sure that every story begins with kind of like a recap, reintroduction to him, so you understand who he is and where he comes from. And I give a good resolution by the end. So his entire arc is always solid for every book. And that's the way I like to do it. I like to create the story, make sure it's based in as real a situation as possible. And so as he's growing, every situation grows with him. And it's just like, everybody's life, you learn something new as you go. So I maintain that throughout the series.
I love that. That is really fun. Absolutely. And I also like the fact that you do the standalone. That's one of the things that I've noticed that, particularly in urban fantasy, we've drifted away from the ability to, jump into the middle of a series and be able to enjoy it. And I think that gives you a little bit more leg room to be able to continue. You're not going to run yourself into like, I can't even think of the author now. I was so glad I didn't read her books, because like by book 4, everybody was like, she's just gone off the deep end. The story doesn't even work anymore. And they were so upset about that. But when you have that clear open and close and structure, it's the structure thing again. That's what we come back to every time.
Yeah, like every book I've got is it has him almost at perfect 2-year increments. So it's not like, okay, this story ends and on a cliffhanger, and then it immediately begins in the next one. I never wanted to do that, because I wanted to have a reader be able to pick up, book 2 or book 3 or book 5, and be able to read it, and immediately from chapter 1 who this character is and what's happening. And by the end, you're happy for the resolution. I didn't want to have, okay, you need to read book 1 to understand book 5 and to actually see where he comes from. Because if you do that, then okay, if someone sees book 5 and they immediately, oh, I don't want to pick up a book 5, even though it looks good and it looks exciting and people talking about it, I don't want to get it, because book 1 has to be the beginning of it, and it has to progress to it. No, I prefer, even though they're part of the same storyline, each one can stand alone. And that's one of the things I set out from the very beginning.
And I absolutely love that. That's one of the things that I always get nervous when I see these huge, like 16 book series. And I'm like, if I buy the first one and I hate it, am I going to be able to stop myself from buying the others just to finish the set? And every time I have to war with myself and convince myself that I can always donate the book. I don't have to buy the whole set. I don't have to keep it if I don't like it. But I like being able to break it up like that. And that's the other thing that I like about the 3-act structure, because you're completely right, Rebecca. When you look at the other ones that go beyond the 3, they're still following the 3-act structure. They just do 3-act structure, then 6-act structure, then 9-act structure. Or they do like this other author did that I can't remember. Cassandra Clare, that's the name, Cassandra Clare. And like by book 6, she's in a completely different genre, apparently. So yeah, I don't know. I was lucky I didn't read them, but apparently she went from urban fantasy to more paranormal erotica. And I was like, yeah, I would have been upset as a reader if I'd gotten to book 4 or 5 and had that happen to me. That would have been devastating. So yeah. So Rebecca, tell us a little bit about what went into the thought process when you were creating your world.
Well, I wanted it to be something that people could relate to. So it's all stuff, places that you can actually look online and pull up this place or pull up this place, and you can see what it looks like. You can see pictures of it. So I wanted people to be able to actually see those places, to be able to put those characters in those situations as they were happening. I used actual, in the first book, I used an actual religious tower in Ireland. It's an actual place. Um, and I wanted people to be able to actually picture her going into this place and doing what she had to do in there. Um, I didn't want to create just a whole brand new everything,
Mhm.
because when you do that, it gets a lot more elaborate, and then you've got all kinds of other stuff that can go wrong with that. If you stick with part of what's already there, what people already know, and just add stuff into it, it makes it a lot easier. So with her, she lives in Idaho, but she travels all over the world. Okay, she travels different places. The first place that you actually meet her in is downtown Philadelphia, and she's going in through alleys and stuff like that. So it's a place where you can actually look at it on a map.
Mhm.
She will go just about anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter where it is. She'll travel there. Um, she is she was kind of created. My husband helped me with a lot of the researching and stuff like that, and she was kind of created through something where we were kind of talking about some stuff and we were going back and forth, and I was like, what if she's like this girl is like a bounty hunter, but she hunts creatures, and it just kind of snowballed from there and stuff. And her name is not ordinary, to say the least. Because her whole backstory is she was actually found as a baby. She doesn't know who her parents are. She was found as a baby under a statue of Hades. So the statue had fallen over, and there was a little area underneath, and she was underneath the statue when this guy found her, and he raised her as his own child. So her name is actually Hades. Her name is Hades Blackhawk. She was raised by a man he was kind of shunned from his tribe. He was a Native American. He was shunned from his tribe, and he kind of raised her to be a hunter. Um, and she just kind of grew up in that lifestyle. She didn't have the ordinary childhood. So when she got to a certain age, she was like, and this is all like discussed through conversations that are in the book. It's not actually part of the book.
Mhm.
But when she got to a certain age, she was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be normal. I want to be normal. So she went out, found the first guy that acknowledged her and got married, realized it was a huge mistake when he did things that he shouldn't have done. And when she got to that point, she was like, this is not what I want. You know, this is probably the worst thing for me. You
Mhm.
know, she thought that what she should be is, little Susie homemaker, marry the rich attorney, be the trophy wife, that kind of thing, because she wasn't really raised around other kids. She didn't have a normal childhood. So she didn't really do a lot of the stuff that normal kids did. But when she stepped out into the real world on her own as an adult, she was like, but all these other people are doing this. Shouldn't I be doing that?
Mhm.
Once she did it, she realized this is not for me. She's too much of an alpha herself to be submissive in that respect. So it it kind of it broke that part of her that wanted to be normal,
Mhm.
and now she kind of embraced the weird, embraced the insanity, um, and that's kind of where she is now at this point. Is she feels whole now. She feels like this is where I need to be. This is what I do.
Mhm.
There's nothing else to me at this point. I'm not that person. This is me. Um, and she had met her partner through her father, her, I guess, adoptive father, and they've been best friends, and with him, she is able to be that child that she was. So they kind of have the little, back and forth where she kind of sticks her tongue out at him, or like, she calls him punk and stuff like that, you know, and she's able to have that child relationship with somebody at that point that she
Mhm.
never had before. She's able to add that to her life now and have that little aspect that she thought she was missing. So there's a lot of stuff that she thought was necessary that she discovers is not. We actually we talked a lot about that. He's been very helpful with kind of breaking apart what I thought I wanted to do and going, well, if you do this, do you really think that's going to make sense? And so he's been a huge help for that kind of stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I use my husband to practice the fight scenes. He doesn't like it.
That's so great.
But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's fun. Um, but do you do that, Alex? Do you like work through scenes with a partner? Is there someone that you kind of collaborate with when you're working through how things are going to play out?
Not exactly. I usually have it gone through either a beta reader or my editor, and I get the feedback from them. My gal does not like reading, which
Oh,
is which is something
yeah,
I
I
would
can
not
relate
have
to that.
thought, but that's okay.
That's hard being a
Yeah,
writer.
Well, the key
I
is,
completely agree.
yeah, you learn to balance each other out. My husband hasn't read a
Mhm.
single one of my books, and then one of my friends was like, "Well, that's
That
horrible." I was like, "No,
hurts.
not really, because the last time he read a book was in college because he had to." So the fact that he supports something that he doesn't benefit from directly, I think is even better than, having somebody. But he does help me with the fight scenes because he's ex-military, and he helps me with the
Same
guns
here.
too, because I know
Same here.
knives, but I'm really bad about guns. It's just not my thing. So he's really great about helping troubleshoot those things, but hasn't read a single thing. We just talk it through. So,
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
all right. And then we're getting close to the end of it. I did want to mention real quick for those in the audience, you can find Alex and Becca both have booths over in the virtual booth section on the LitCon website, and they're under the Urban Fantasy tab. Be sure to check those out. Also, they are both participating in the cover wars, which are also at the bottom of that page. So go ahead and go check out their covers and decide which covers you like the most. They're not the only ones in there. There's some other covers over there. So go vote on those, because the first bracket should be closing tomorrow morning. So get your votes in so we know who gets to go on to the next round. And then to wrap up this fun conversation, what is one tip that you would give to somebody who wants to get into writing, particularly into urban fantasy when it comes to world building? And we'll go ahead and start with Alex.
I would always say begin with something that you want to see turn into a magical or fantastic situation. Take a regular, just a regular situation, someone going home, someone going to school, someone going to their job, and see if you can put a fantasy element to that. Some magical, creatures, some abilities, something in there, and then you actually have something grounded. Once you have it grounded in what you want, what you're looking for, then you can go in any direction you want, yet maintain, in the world that you're in. One of the things I always loved about the original movie Men in Black was at the very end. He was, or not at the end, the middle. He was talking about the most important thing is people do not know that this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only reason they continue with their lives is they have no idea the world is in danger. So one of the things I always maintain in my fantasy books is nobody knows. He's a main character living this world, fighting these killers and standing up for all these terrible things, but nobody realizes what he can do or what's happening. And that's one of the best parts of writing a fantasy story. You can make it as normal as possible on the surface, but when you describe everything happening underneath, you can create this entire world that people will just love to go into. And that's one of the best things I like about fantasy.
I like that. I like that a lot. Absolutely. And Rebecca, what's one piece of advice that you would give when it comes to world building for urban fantasy?
Be consistent with what you're doing. If you've established something as, this is this way, keep it that way. Don't start going, well, for this person, it's this way. For this person, it's this way. Um, Maintain that consistency, because once you start going off track, people are going to go, but wait, but what about this one? And it gets very confusing. So whatever you established, maintain your consistency.
Yep, that is definitely true. And you do see that a lot in some of the, especially the longer fantasy series, because they're trying to figure out how they can break it up without making it too distance from. And I think you were smart. You started with unique characters and folklore. And so people aren't going, wait, where are my vampires? I want my vampires, because you
Hmm.
haven't established that. You're already working outside of that norm. I do like that.
Yep.
And then I think my advice would have to be take as much time to describe the real world as you do the fantasy overlay. Because I think sometimes we get lazy. I mean, I'll admit, I used to tell people all the time, I write urban fantasy because I'm too lazy to write fantasy, because all that world building is hard. um,
Yes.
but the reality is that you still have to, just like with historical fiction and just like with other contemporary fiction, they have to do the same thing. You still have to establish the world that exists, and that world has to feel real, even with the fantastical elements. Um, and so I strongly recommend pick a place and describe that place, just like Rebecca was talking about in the beginning. People can actually go and look at pictures and recognize her world in the pictures that they look at. And I think that's one of the exciting things that we get to do as well in urban fantasy. And we forget that if we give them that grounding, it makes it feel more real, less fantastic, but also gives them more possibility than you get with fantasy. And that's fun. Okay, let's go ahead and let everybody wrap up. Alex, tell everybody where they can find you, not only at LitCon, but also after LitCon is over.
Okay. You can find me at alexgzarate.com, and you can find me in any social media, Alex G Zarete. I've recently started posting video clips on TikTok as well, not of me, but the genre in general. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and pretty much anywhere and everywhere. And of course on Amazon, Alex G Zarete.
All right, and Rebecca, tell us where we can find you.
I'm on Facebook, Rebecca Flynn author. I'm on Twitter at Rebecca Flynn 79. You can find my stuff on blackrosewriting.com. That's my publisher. And I don't have a website, so I'm not cool like that. I don't have one of those quite yet, but Facebook and Twitter are usually the best places to find me. I post updates and things like that, cover reveals, all that fun stuff.
Okay, awesome. And for those of you who haven't followed me, you can find me at HeidiAngell.com. And that's Angel with 2 L's, because I'm not that kind of angel. And thanks so much for being a part of this Urban Fantasy panel. Be sure to go and check out LitCon Lounge, because we are getting pretty darn close to After Dark, where the authors get together, maybe get a couple drinks, get chit-chatting, and there's no plan, there's no topic in particular. You can come and rub elbows with each other. And as readers, you're welcome to join as well. Just let the host know that you want to join in the comments, and he'll send you the link. This is for all of us to get a chance to kind of get together and hang out like you would at a real con. After all of the presentations are done, we all go to the after party, right? So we look forward to seeing you guys over there. And then also be sure to check out the LitCon litcon.org website, and under the fantasy section, we have a whole bunch of really fun panels that are going to be happening over the next 2 days. And then we also have a couple of blog hops, and there is a giveaway out there. So I know that Alex has a book that's going to be in the giveaway. So you guys should go check that out, find out all the fun that's going on, and let us know what you'd like to see more of at LitCon. Thanks so much and have a great night.
Night.
Good night.
Mhm.